Right now, we are going to discuss some problems that involves polarization. So let's get started. Unpolarized light with an intensity of I sub 0 passes through two polarizing filters that are 90 degrees with respect to each other. What is the intensity of light that emerges through each filter in terms of I sub 0? Alright, so we have unpolarized light. So you know that unpolarized light just have so many direction here. Okay, so after it is going to the first filter, you know that I sub 0, which is a unpolarized light, this one will have the first intensity here will be 1/2 I sub 0. Okay, we already understand the concept of that one. So here we have this one. It will be filtered. However, for the second polarization or polarizer, or we call it analyzer, what will be I sub 0? What will be I2 in terms of I sub 0? So we know that I2 is equal to I sub 1 cosine squared theta. And that particular theta is equal to 90. So I1 cosine squared 90. And we know that cosine 90 is equal to 0. So the answer here is 0. There will be no intensity or there will be no light that will pass through to through these two polarizers that are 90 degrees from each other. All right, let's proceed now. Number 2. The light with intensity I sub 0 passes through a polarizer. And the second polarizer, which is also called an analyzer, with an angle 30 degrees relative to the first one, determine the intensity of light as it passes through the two filters in terms of I sub 0. Okay, so here we have 90 degrees. How about for 30 degrees? What can we do? So it's the same with here. We have unpolarized light. We have I sub 1, which is 1/2 I sub 0, and what is going to be I sub 2. So we have I sub 2 is equal to I sub 1 cosine squared theta. Okay? But um we know that I sub 1 is also equal to 1/2 I sub 0, just like this. Okay? Just like this. So, what can we do here? We can do I sub 2 is equal to I sub 1 cosine squared 30. Okay? Cosine squared 30. And then afterwards, we know that cosine 30 is equal to square root of 3 over 2. So that means that I2 is equal to I1 square root of 3 over 2 squared. So that means that I2 is equal to 3/4 I1. Okay. However, it is asking to determine the intensity of light as it passes through the two filters in terms of I sub 0. In terms of I sub 0. So that means we are going to use this and substitute this to this one. So I2 is going to be equal to 3/4 times 1/2 times I sub 0. So the correct answer is I2 is equal to 3/8 I sub 0. So that means that the intensity of light here will be 3/8 of the original one. Next, number 3. Unpolarized light with an intensity of 100 watt per square meter passes through two polarizing filters that are oriented at 40 degrees to each other. Okay? What is the intensity of light from the two filters? So, at this particular case, there is a number. There is already a given. So, in the first one, we know that unpolarized light, this is 100 watt per square meter, the intensity of that one. After passing through the first polarizer, we know that this I1 will be equal to 50 watt per square meter. What if it will pass through the polarizer that is 40 degrees to relative to the I1. So what can be I2 here? For I2 here, we know that, okay, for I2, we know that this is equal to I1 cosine squared 40. Okay, cosine squared 40. So that means that I will use I2 is equal to 50 cosine squared 40. The correct answer here is equal to 29.3 watt per square meter. Okay, so there. So this is the correct answer for I2. Next, we proceed. Unpolarized light with an intensity of 72 watt per square meter passes through two polarizing filters. If the light that emerges from the second filter has an intensity of 9 watt per square meter, what is the angle between the two filters? All right, this is a different question compared to the last three. Okay, so here we have unpolarized light, which is 72 watt per square meter. And then afterwards, we have this polarizer that that filtered the intensity. This is going to be I1. And you know that I1 is equal to 1/2 I sub 0. Afterwards, we have this. And this is the angle. But we know that after passing through this is 9 watt per square meter. So how can we determine this? We know that after it passes to this one, this is 1/2 times 72 is equal to 36. So here, what we can do is we can have I2 is equal to I1 cosine squared theta. What is I2? I2 is 9. 9 is equal to 36 cosine squared theta. So we have 9 over 36 is equal to cosine squared theta. Then we have square root. Then we will have the answer here is 1/2 is equal to cosine theta, or theta is equal to 60 degrees. So this is the angle of the second filter. In order for you to get 9 watt per square meter.